Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into one of the quietest, most chemically assisted, and surprisingly well-furnished social experiments in American history. The post-war suburban dream, and everything the dream required you to take to keep believing in it. Not the black and white TV version. Not the Norman Rockwell version. The one that smells like fresh asphalt, cigarette smoke, and a medicine cabinet with 4 different bottles, and none of them labeled for you specifically. If you enjoy this kind of slow, deadpan drift through history that is somehow both deeply calming and faintly alarming, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Special thanks to the listener who sent in tonight's topic settle in, because this one is going to take a while, and you probably shouldn't operate heavy machinery afterward. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always somehow 2 inches the morning somewhere, and statistically that person is on their 3rd glass of something and calling it unwinding. Go ahead and dim the lights, turn on a fan for some soft white noise, and settle into the pillow with the specific stillness of someone who has realized the house is perfect and the street is quiet and something is still not quite right. Have you ever wondered what it actually felt like to move into a brand new house on a brand new street in a brand new town that did not exist 18 months ago? What exactly was in the medicine cabinet by year 3? Could you survive a social calendar so relentless that your doctor starts calling it a prescription? Why did roughly 1/3 of all prescriptions written in America in 1957 turn out to be the same pill? The bar cart, was it a choice? Or did it come with the house? Did anyone sleep? Did they sleep without help? And seriously, who decided the lawn was a moral obligation? Congratulations. You've just woken up in Levittown, New York, 1958. The carpet is new. The walls still smell faintly of paint. There are 3 bottles in the medicine cabinet, and the 4th one arrives Thursday. Good luck. You sit at a folding table in a half-finished sales office on Long Island, signing a stack of papers thick enough to use as a doorstop. The man across from you is wearing a tie clip shaped like a tiny house. He turns the pages for you and points at the lines where your signature goes, one after the other, the way a dental hygienist points at the next tooth. You sign the deed. You sign the mortgage. You sign the covenant. The covenant is on page 7, and you do not read it. Outside, someone is framing a house. It will be finished before you leave the parking lot. William Levitt's crews are running at full production right now, and full production means 1 completed house every 16 minutes, a rate that makes the phrase "built to last" feel more like a suggestion than a guarantee. The lumber is green. The concrete is curing. The house next to yours is already occupied, and the one next to that one went up this morning. The development doesn't grow so much as it arrives, all at once, on 4,000 acres of former Long Island potato field that last week was still growing potatoes. Let's talk about what you're actually buying. The Cape Cod model goes for $7,990. No down payment if you're a veteran, which you are, which is the entire point of being a veteran as far as the Federal Housing Administration is concerned. The GI Bill says you've earned this. The VA loan says the government agrees. The monthly payment is around $60, which is less than you were paying for your apartment in Queens. And the apartment in Queens didn't have a yard. It didn't have a 2nd bedroom. It definitely didn't have a built-in television set included in the purchase price, which this one does. A 2 1-inch RCA Victor, warm to the touch even when it's off, faintly smelling of something like ozone and ambition. The man with the tie clip slides a floor plan across the table. It shows a living room, a kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a space in the corner labelled utility. The utility is not a utility. It's a closet the size of a generous thought. But the kitchen has a new refrigerator and the living room has that television set. And the whole thing is yours for $60 a month. And the understanding that you will maintain the lawn to a standard that the neighborhood association has not yet defined, but will absolutely enforce. Now, the covenant on page 7. You didn't read it. Most people don't. It's written in the kind of language that makes your eyes slide sideways off the page, dense and formal and specifically designed to be agreed to rather than understood. What it says, among other things, is that the property cannot be used or occupied by any person other than members of the Caucasian race. That's the line. Levitt will later say he didn't write it. He also won't remove it for another decade. The line sits on page 7, the way a bad smell sits in a room, present, unacknowledged, and apparently everyone's problem to deal with except the person who caused it. A woman named Dolores Hanratty, 3 tables over, is also signing. She signs without looking up. She has a toddler on her hip who is trying to eat the pen. She signs the covenant too, and then she asks the man with the tie clip how long until the school's open, and he says September, and she nods like that settles something important. She shifts the toddler. The toddler loses interest in the pen and grabs her necklace instead. You take your copy of the deed. The paper is still warm from the mimeograph. Outside, another house just finished. You wake on Saturday and pull on the cotton work pants that exist solely for this purpose. The lawn is your job. Nobody has ever told you the lawn is your job. The lawn is your job the same way breathing is your job, by silent universal agreement, with the difference that the neighbours will let you know if you stop. You roll the mower out of the garage. The blade smells like last week's grass, and a faint sweetness underneath that is, technically, gasoline. Let's talk about the lawn, not the grass, the lawn. There's a difference, and that difference is civic duty. The grass is a plant. The lawn is a performance you give every Saturday morning to an audience that is absolutely watching from behind curtain panels and will remember. Your neighbour Gerald has been watching since 7:45. He has a clipboard. No, he doesn't have a clipboard. He just looks like he has a clipboard. The fertilizer arrived in April. You ordered it because a mailer told you to, and also because the man across the street's lawn turned a colour best described as ambitious, and something shifted in your chest that you didn't quite have a word for. The bag weighs 40 pounds and smells like ammonia and good intentions. You spread it in overlapping rows, careful not to miss a strip, because a missed strip is a brown stripe in 3 weeks, and a brown stripe is a conversation you do not want to have. The lawn chemicals are marketed to you the way cigarettes are marketed to you, with the confident suggestion that this is simply what men like you do. The mowing pattern is straight lines. Straight lines are the baseline. Diagonal stripes are for radicals. The Briggs & Stratton engine rattles to life on the second pull, which is a good morning. On a bad morning, it's 5 pulls and a period of negotiation. You push it in even rows up, the slight grade of your lot, the blade throwing a green mist behind you, the exhaust mixing with the sweetness of cut grass into something that smells, against all chemical logic, like progress. The leaded gasoline note sits underneath all of it. You don't notice it, nobody notices it. It's just the smell of Saturday, the smell of movement, the smell of everything working the way it's supposed to, Mrs. Kowalski from 3 doors down pauses at the end of her driveway, holding a coffee cup with both hands, watching your rows. She nods once with the seriousness of a building inspector, watchful, slightly approving, and entirely judicial. You nod back. This is the entire relationship. It is, in its way, a complete one. By 9:30 you're done. The lawn is a rectangle of organised intent. You stand at the edge of it the way you'd stand at the edge of something you've built, which you have. Not a house, not a room, but a signal. The signal says, we are fine here. We are managing. Nothing is wrong that a mower and 40 pounds of ammonia can't address. You wheel the mower back into the garage and the smell of last week's grass follows you in, familiar and faintly accusing, the way a good lawn always is. You walk 3 doors down at 9:15, carrying a coffee cake that you bought at the Grand Union and lightly rearranged on a plate. Mrs. Harrison is hosting. Mrs. Harrison is always hosting, in the same way that some people are always wearing pearls. There are 7 other women on the patio. There will be coffee. There will also, eventually, be a small white tablet that nobody mentions and everybody recognizes, sitting next to the cream pitcher like a sugar cube with a job. The tablet is meprobamate. Brand name, Miltown. Wallace Laboratories launched it in 1955, and within the first year, American physicians wrote 36 million prescriptions for it. By 1957, it accounts for roughly 1/3 of all prescriptions written in the United States. 1/3. Not of psychiatric prescriptions. All prescriptions. Your internist prescribes it. Your neighbour's internist prescribes it. The drugstore fountain 3 blocks away calls it Mother's Little Helper, years before anyone writes a song about that. It costs about $3.50 a month, which sits comfortably inside the grocery budget, right between the Maxwell house and the paper towels. Nobody on the patio calls it by name. Mrs. Delacroix, who hosts on Thursdays and keeps her pill bottle inside a decorative tin shaped like a windmill, slides one across the table toward you with a practiced casualness of someone who has been doing this for 18 months, calm, fluent, and entirely unhurried. She doesn't make eye contact. You don't say thank you. The cream pitcher does not comment on any of this. Neither does anyone else. Your doctor prescribes it. Your neighbor's doctor prescribes it. Occasionally your neighbor prescribes it to you directly, out of a purse, between the second and third cup of coffee, because her prescription runs a little long and yours ran a little short, and this is simply efficient. The suburb has built a small, quiet pharmaceutical logistics network out of bridge clubs and patio mornings, which is basically a Facebook marketplace. Except the marketplace is a linen tablecloth and the goods are a Schedule 4 substance that causes convulsions if you stop taking it abruptly. The 1958 AMA warning about physical dependence is out there, technically. Nobody has brought it to the patio. Let's talk about Mrs. Harrison's tin. It's not a tin. It's a Limoges box, small and blue, shaped like a cabbage. She lifts the lid with one finger, tips a single tablet out, sets the box back down, and smooths the tablecloth once on each side of it. The whole gesture takes 4 seconds and has the quality of a liturgy. You understand immediately that she has been doing this every morning for a very long time, and that the Limoges box is load-bearing in ways the manufacturer did not intend. The conversation moves to the new ranch homes going up on Birchwood Drive and whether the Pattersons are getting a second car. The tablet dissolves. The morning continues. Outside, someone mows. The sound arrives and recedes like a tide. By 10:30, the coffee cake is mostly gone, the cream pitcher is empty, and 7 of the 8 women on Mrs. Harrison's patio are experiencing a mild, clinically measurable reduction in anxiety that their physicians consider routine, their husbands consider invisible, and the annals of internal medicine will, in 1960, estimate affects roughly 1.5 million American adults at any given moment, about 1% of the adult population. You refold your napkin, you compliment the tablecloth. You pick up your empty plate, the one that used to have coffee cake on it, or at least had the suggestion of one, and walk back 3 doors toward your own kitchen. The morning was pleasant. It usually is. You pick up the kitchen phone, which is mounted on the wall and has a cord long enough to reach the refrigerator, and you dial Dr. Felton's office. Dr. Felton has been your doctor since you moved in. Dr. Felton has been the doctor of every house on this block since the block had houses. You tell the receptionist your name. You do not need to tell her what you are calling about, because you only ever call about one thing, and she only ever writes down one thing, and somewhere a small ritual is being performed. Doctor. Felton's waiting room has 2 National Geographics from 1956 and a framed print of a sailboat that no one has ever looked at directly. You sit across from a woman whose name you don't know but whose coat you admire, and the two of you do not speak, which is fine, because the coat says everything. A nurse opens a door. You go in. Doctor. Felton listens to your chest, asks how you've been sleeping, and writes on a small pad while you are still forming your answer. The appointment is 11 minutes. You know this because it is always 11 minutes. Let's talk about the prescription pad. It's not a prescription pad, it's an architectural feature. Doctor. Felton has been writing on it since 1955, since Wallace Laboratories sent a representative with a briefcase full of samples and a pamphlet describing meprobamate as the first truly safe tranquilizer, safe being a word that, at that particular moment in American pharmacology, was doing a tremendous amount of structural load-bearing. The sales rep also left behind a set of monogrammed golf tees. Dr. Felton still uses them. The refill costs $3.50. You can fit this into the grocery budget between the Campbell's cream of mushroom soup and the paper towels without any arithmetic. The pharmacist, his name is Mr. Gets, and he has a habit of tapping the counter twice before handing over a bag, as if confirming the transaction with himself, already has your file. He taps twice. You take the bag. The receipt is inside the bag because Mr. Gets always puts the receipt inside the bag, a personal policy that no one has ever questioned. Dr. Felton doesn't think of himself as pharmacological infrastructure. He thinks of himself as a neighbor who went to Johns Hopkins. He sees 40 patients a day in a suburb where 31% of housewives in comparable communities are reporting symptoms consistent with clinical depression in peer-reviewed journals that no one on Sycamore Ridge is reading. He is not reading them either. He has the golf tees, monogrammed, gleaming, and entirely innocent. A 1959 audit of 6 suburban pharmacies in Cook County, Illinois, found that sedatives and tranquilizers made up 27% of all prescriptions dispensed, more than double the rate at urban pharmacies across town. The medicine cabinet in your bathroom currently holds meprobamate, a bottle of phenobarbital from 8 months ago that you didn't finish, and a small amber vial of chloral hydrate that Dr. Felton prescribed in 1957 for what he called situational tension, a 2-word diagnosis carrying the weight of about 400 Thursday afternoons. It does not address. The vial has a childproof cap that is not, in practice, childproof. You know this. Withdrawal from meprobamate, if it comes to that, can cause convulsions. The AMA mentioned this in 1958. The prescriptions kept rising after the AMA mentioned this, which suggests the mention landed more or less the way a post-it note lands on a moving train. No one in Dr. Felton's waiting room knows about the convulsions. The sailboat print certainly doesn't mention it. You sit with your small white bag and your $3.50 receipt and you drive home on roads that exist specifically so that you can drive home, and the bottle is in your purse. And the bottle is not doing anything dramatic. It is just sitting there being a bottle, very calmly, very quietly, already completely certain you'll be back. You drive to the Walgreens on Hempstead Turnpike, which has a soda fountain along the back wall and a pharmacist named Phil who knows your last name and your first name and your middle name because he once had to fill it out on an insurance form. You hand him the slip. He hands you a small amber bottle with a metal cap. The whole transaction takes 90 seconds. He calls you ma'am. The bottle costs $3.50 and is, technically, a tranquilizer. The amber bottle is a very specific shade of orange, not warm, not cheerful, just the particular colour of something that doesn't want to be looked at too closely. Phil drops it into a small paper bag and folds the top over once with a motion that is brisk, practiced, and entirely unceremonious. A man who has folded that exact bag 400 times this month. He has. Phil's bag fold is load-bearing infrastructure. At the fountain, a girl in a white apron, her name tag says Debbie, though she goes by nothing you've ever actually used, sets a strawberry phosphate in front of a 12-year-old who is taking up space on a Tuesday afternoon. The overhead fluorescents hum. A display of Miltown near the register describes the drug as ideal for the pressures of modern living, which is a phrase that does a lot of heavy lifting without specifying what, exactly, modern living involves. You already know. You're holding it in a paper bag. Let's talk about what's in the bag. Meprobamate. 30 tablets at a controlled dosage. The monthly refill fits inside the household budget the way a magazine subscription does. Small enough to vanish into the column of ordinary expenses, present enough that you'd notice if it stopped. $3.50 against the cost of new curtains, a roast, and whatever the hardware store is going to ask for the hose nozzle this week. The bottle wins by virtue of being the least complicated thing on the list. A woman named Carol Ashford moves through the pharmacy behind you, pausing at the vitamins with the body language of someone who is not actually looking at vitamins. She's waiting for her own paper bag. She picks up a bottle of B-complex, sets it down, picks it up again. Phil has her bag ready before she reaches the counter. He doesn't ask. She doesn't explain. This is the rhythm. Carol gets a nod and a receipt and the same fold, and she is back through the glass door in under 2 minutes, which is less time than it takes to name what she came in for. The soda fountain crowd doesn't notice Carol. They're watching a man in a short-sleeved shirt eat a toasted cheese sandwich and read the sports section. The girl in the Debbie apron refills his coffee without being asked. Outside, a Buick idles in the parking lot at a frequency that registers in your back teeth before your ears. The automatic doors open and close for a woman with a stroller. The fluorescents hum their one note. You're back in the car before the ice in Debbie's fountain has shifted. The paper bag sits on the passenger seat, not quite taking up space, not quite invisible. $3.50, 30 tablets. A month of modern living, measured out in a bottle the size of a salt shaker. Phil is already calling the next name. You open the medicine cabinet to find the aspirin and discover that you can no longer find the aspirin. The cabinet contains, in approximate order of recent arrival, a bottle of Miltown from Dr. Felton, a bottle of Doridin from Dr. Pierce, a bottle of Seconal from the doctor at the hospital after the appendix thing, a bottle of phenobarbital from somebody, 2 bottles of unmarked tablets, and a tube of toothpaste. The aspirin, eventually, is behind the seconal. The aspirin always loses. Let's talk about Dr. Felton, Dr. Pierce, and the doctor at the hospital. They don't know each other. They've never been in the same room. None of them has ever seen this cabinet. Each one wrote a prescription based on what you told him, in his office, alone, in roughly 12 minutes. And the information each one has is a different version of you. The tired you, the anxious you, the post-surgical you. The cabinet is where all three versions live together now. Nobody coordinates this. The Miltown sits next to the Doridan sits next to the seconal, and the bottles do not, on the shelf, exchange notes. Doridan is the newest arrival, FDA approved 1954. Glutathione, if you want the name on the form, Doctor. Pierce called it a modern alternative to the barbiturates, which is a little like being offered a modern alternative to a screen door during a hurricane. It is still a sedative. It still has a withdrawal profile that would interest a neurologist. The bottle is smaller than the others, neat, modern, and faintly hopeful, which is doing some work, visually, in terms of suggesting that this one is fine. Now, the phenobarbital. The label says the prescribing doctor is a Dr. R. Holloway, which you recognize as the name on the prescription but not as anyone you can picture. You have a memory of a waiting room with green chairs. That's the whole file. Doctor. Holloway's bottle has been in the cabinet long enough that the label has absorbed some moisture and is starting to lift at one corner. The bottle has achieved a kind of tenure. You are not sure you've ever opened it. You are also not sure you haven't. The Miltown is for anxiety. The Doridan is for sleep. The seconal is also for sleep, which means you have 2 sleep prescriptions from 2 physicians and a third sedative that could, in a pinch, pull double duty. The phenobarbital is for something. The unmarked bottles are a project for another Sunday. The whole shelf has the orderly look of a small chemist's stockroom run by a kindly old man, except every bottle on it can cause convulsions if you stop taking it too quickly, and the kindly old man has not, on any of his labels, mentioned this. A 1959 audit of 6 suburban pharmacies in Cook County, Illinois, found that sedatives and tranquilizers made up 27% of all prescriptions filled. That's roughly 1 in 4. The number at urban Chicago pharmacies, same year, same audit, was 11%. The audit sits in a journal on a library shelf in Cook County, where nobody on Sycamore Ridge has ever requested it. Marjorie Hendricks from 3 doors down stops by Sunday afternoons sometimes, ostensibly for coffee. She sets her purse on the counter with the specific confidence of someone who has done this before. At some point she asks, in the way people ask questions whose answers they already know, whether you still have any of the seconal from the appendix thing. You do. She takes 4. You take 4. You each drink your coffee. The purse returns to her shoulder. This is the supply chain. It runs on Pyrex and good manners and nobody naming it out loud. The cabinet closes. The little mirrored door swings shut and you're back to your own face, which looks like it could use the aspirin you've now located. The Sunday afternoon light comes through the bathroom window at the specific angle that makes everything look slightly more clinical than it needs to. The aspirin is a single bottle. It doesn't have a doctor's name on it. It's almost touching. You take the first one before your feet touch the bedroom carpet, because Dr. Felton said to take it on an empty stomach with a small sip of water, and you keep the small sip of water in a glass on the nightstand specifically for this purpose. The tablet is white and chalky and smaller than a baby aspirin. You swallow it. You do not feel anything yet. You are not supposed to feel anything yet. What you are supposed to feel in about 20 minutes is fine. Fine is the goal. Not happy. Not rested, not calm in any way that you could describe to someone at a dinner party. Fine is a specific and clinical destination, and Dr. Felton has been navigating you toward it since March. The tablet is meprobamate, which the drugstore in town sells under the name Miltown, which the pharmacist behind the counter sometimes refers to as the little peacemaker, the way you might name a boat. He is not being ironic. Nobody is being ironic. Let's talk about the 20 minutes. You have a system for them. You don't lie back down, because lying back down is how you end up still in bed at 9 with the children demanding cereal and a low-grade shame that follows you into the afternoon. Instead, you sit on the edge of the mattress. You look at the curtains. The curtains are beige, which seem neutral in the fabric store, and now seems like a daily editorial. You wait. By the time you're in the bathroom, the edges of things have softened slightly. Not gone, softened. The mirror gives you back your face. smooth, composed, and faintly absent, the face that has been taking Miltown since March. A Kalfa in an Ottoman harem would recognize the specific quality of this composure, the stillness that is not peace but is arranged to resemble it. You brush your teeth. You do this carefully, because you read somewhere that the enamel is worth protecting. The bottle on the nightstand holds a 30-day supply, which cost you $3.50 at the pharmacy, which is less than a pound of ground beef and a box of crackers. The economics are tidy. The American pharmaceutical industry produced roughly 24 barbiturate pills per capita in 1950, for every man, woman, and child, before they even got to the tranquilizers, and the pricing reflects this kind of volume. It costs almost nothing to feel fine. The bottle on the nightstand is smaller than the box of crackers, and you reach for it more often. The second pill isn't until noon. Right now there's only the one, and the curtains, and the 20 minutes, and the fact that across the street, Linda Marsh is sitting on her own mattress edge with a glass of water and a chalky tablet from a slightly different bottle. Linda's curtains are pale green. Her husband chose them. She looks at them the way you look at yours. Of course, you get dressed. This is not optional, and the Miltown doesn't change that. You put on the day the way you'd put on a girdle, with some effort, working from the bottom up, snapping things into place. The children are already audible downstairs. There's a sound coming from the kitchen that might be the toaster or might be a small collapse. You'll find out shortly. Doctor. Felton's instructions were specific. 1 tablet in the morning, 1 at midday, 1 in the evening, no more than 4 in any 24-hour period. Call the office if you feel unusual. You have not called the office. Unusual would require a reference point, and the reference point has been receding since March, at approximately the same rate the medication arrived. The glass on the nightstand holds just enough water. You've calibrated this precisely. The glass has been at this longer than you have. You back the Bel Air out of the driveway at 7:40, with 2 children buckled into nothing because seatbelts will not be standard equipment for another 6 years. The route to Holy Cross Elementary is 1.5 miles by crow and 4.25 miles by road, because the road bends in a series of decorative half-circles designed by a man who hated grids. You drive past 9 identical houses, then 9 more, then a small commercial strip, then a small commercial strip identical to the previous one. The car is 3 years old and already feels like part of the body. You don't think of it as a vehicle exactly. It's more like a room that moves, a room you are required to be inside, because the alternative is standing at the end of a driveway that goes nowhere on foot. The nearest grocery is 2.3 miles. The nearest bus stop, if the town has one, is academic. The 1956 Federal Highway Act is currently pouring $25 billion into making sure this arrangement is permanent. That money is doing its job. The smell is leaded gasoline, sweet, slightly acrid, the specific scent of Tuesday morning in 1958, and you've been breathing it since the car warmed up in the garage with the door still half closed because you were finishing your coffee. The leaded part is doing what leaded parts do, which is enter the bloodstream and lower the cognitive threshold for irritability by a margin that no one is currently measuring. Nobody calls it that. It smells like going somewhere. It smells like freedom, specifically because a television commercial told you so last Thursday. The children are ages 6 and 4. Kevin sits in the middle of the back seat with the posture of a small bureaucrat awaiting a hearing. Diane has pressed her face against the passenger window and is watching the identical houses scroll past with the philosophical detachment of someone who has already seen enough of them. Neither child is restrained by anything except the vague social agreement that the drive is short and therefore fine. The car has no shoulder belts. The car has no lap belts. The dashboard is unpadded metal, flat, hard, and uncompromisingly chrome, which is, in fairness, very shiny. The road curves left, then right, then gently left again, past a small park with a sign that says Lakewood Commons and no lake. The curvilinear layout was sold to buyers as more pleasant than a grid, more natural, more like the English countryside. The English countryside does not need a car to buy milk. This does not seem to have come up in the planning discussions. You stop at a red light behind a Ford ranch wagon with a fishing rod sticking out the back window. A woman in a blue housecoat is waiting at the corner with 2 more children, watching the ranch wagon the way you watch something that isn't going to help you. You don't know her name. You've seen her at the corner before. The suburb has approximately 11,000 people in it, and the street layout ensures you will see the same 7 of them on a rotating basis. which creates the persistent low-level impression of community without the inconvenient specifics of it. The Bel Air's radio is on. A man is explaining, with great urgency, that your family deserves the peace of mind that only comes from the right insurance policy, and also from Chesterfield cigarettes, which a different man will explain in 40 seconds. You reach into the ashtray for the cigarette you left there at 7:35. It's still going. Slightly. You are one of the 70% of American men, aged 25 to 44, who smoke, which means the car has been marinating in this atmosphere since you bought it, and the upholstery has simply accepted its situation. Holy Cross Elementary appears on the right, a low brick building behind a chain-link fence, with a flagpole and a crossing guard named Mr. Dennehy, who waves at every car with the same two-fingered salute regardless of whether he knows you. Kevin has his lunchbox. Diane has lost her right shoe between the driveway and now, in a distance of roughly 4 blocks, under circumstances no one can explain. You pull up. You say goodbye. They get out. The door closes. You sit for a moment in the idling car, in the specific silence that follows children leaving it, which is the best silence in the suburban day. Then you pull back onto the decorative half-circle, past 9 identical houses, and begin the 4¼ miles back. You arrive at the Grand Union with a paper list that is, in fact, a Campbell's recipe. Wednesday is hamburger casserole night. Wednesday has been hamburger casserole night for 3 years, which is approximately as long as you have lived here. The recipe calls for 1 can of cream of mushroom soup, 1 pound of ground beef, 1 bag of egg noodles, a small dish of frozen peas, and a ½ cup of grated cheddar. None of these items are vegetables in any meaningful sense, and the recipe knows this, and the recipe does not care. The Grand Union is enormous by the standards of what grocery stores used to be, 23 aisles. Fluorescent light at a frequency that makes everything look slightly more edible than it is, yellow, dependable, and faintly clinical. The floor is buffed to a shine that communicates confidence. Produce near the entrance, arranged by someone who feels strongly about produce. You are not here for the produce. You are here for aisle 7, where the canned soups are stacked in columns that go from floor to roughly shoulder height, which is basically a wall of sodium organized alphabetically by flavor. The cart is chrome. It handles slightly to the left, in the specific way that carts at this Grand Union have always handled slightly to the left, and you have adjusted your entire walking posture around this without noticing. You steer around a display of Jell-O molds, 12 flavors, all of them technically a dessert, several of them clearly a threat, and head toward the back. A woman named Patricia is examining a bag of frozen peas near the freezer case with the seriousness of someone diffusing something. She holds the bag at arm's length and rotates it once, slowly. She puts it back. She takes it again. Patricia has been in this aisle for approximately 11 minutes and will be here for 4 more. You take a bag without looking and move on, which is the only sane response. The canned goods aisle smells like nothing. That's the thing about canned goods. They've made their peace with absence. The cream of mushroom soup is exactly where it always is. 3rd shelf, left side, between tomato and chicken noodle. You take 2 because last time you ran out on a Thursday, and Thursday has its own pressures. The can is cool in your hand. The can has never let you down. The can will be dinner in 4 hours and everyone will eat it, and nobody will say anything in particular about it, which is more or less the ideal outcome. Egg noodles go in the cart. So does ground beef from the meat case at the back, where a man named Gerald in a white coat is rearranging a tray of pork chops with the demeanor of someone who has been asked to rearrange these pork chops every day for 7 years and has arrived at a private philosophy about it. He hands you the beef wrapped in white paper with a small sticker and a nod. Gerald has never spoken to you beyond the transaction. Gerald doesn't need to. The transaction contains everything. You pass the baking aisle and the cereal aisle and a small seasonal display for something new called a party dip that apparently requires only 1 can of soup and a block of cream cheese, which sounds like a dare. You add the cream cheese anyway. You're having the Holloways over on Saturday, and the Holloways have opinions about effort. By the time you reach the checkout, the cart weighs roughly as much as your intentions for the week did at 8 this morning. The cashier, whose name tag reads Donna, moves everything across the belt with a rhythm that suggests she's done this approximately 40,000 times, because she has. She doesn't look at the items. She looks at you, briefly, in the way that checkout clerks look at you when they've clocked the cart and made a private assessment and decided not to share it. Total comes to $4.83. You write a check. You always write a check. The check will clear on Friday, which gives you Thursday as a structural buffer, which is a sentence that would not have meant anything to your mother but means something specific and navigable to you. Donna tears off your receipt with a snap that echoes once. The fluorescent lights hum. Outside, the Bel Air is waiting in the second row where you always leave it, slightly to the left of center. You sit at a card table set up in the Carlsons' rumpus room, which is a finished basement with paneling on 3 walls and a small bar in the corner. There are 4 of you. You are partnered with Mrs. Carlson, who plays the way some people drive, confidently and somewhere just to the left of legal. Between the second and third hand, Mrs. Carlson opens her purse to find her lipstick and removes 3 other things first, one of which is a small unmarked envelope she slides across the table to Joan. Joan pockets it without looking up from her cards. This is not remarkable. Nobody remarks on it. You play your 3 of clubs. The envelope isn't drugs technically. It's a prescription. It's just not Joan's prescription. Joan's doctor doesn't know she takes them, because Joan's doctor prescribes her a different one, the oval ones, not the round ones, and the combination of the 2 is something nobody has mapped out on paper, least of all the 2 doctors who together hold both prescriptions and have never been in the same room. The envelope crosses the table the way a sugar packet crosses a table, with about the same ceremony. Mrs. Carlson finds her lipstick. She applies it between tricks without a mirror, quick, deft, and entirely unobserved. She has done this so many times the motion is its own memory. The envelope cost her about $3.50, which is less than what she spent on the sour mix. The bar in the corner has a name. Not a formal name. But it's called the bar the way a room can be called a room, definitionally, without explanation. Roughly 35% of homes built in planned suburban developments between 1952 and 1960 came with one included. Yours didn't, but Mr. Carlson built his the first winter they moved in, which counts for something. It has a cocktail shaker, 6 matching glasses, and a bottle of bitters that nobody touches but that would feel like a lie to remove. Mr. Carlson fixes your gin and tonic with the focused expression of a man who has found his one domestic jurisdiction and intends to hold it. The room smells like cigarette smoke, carpet, and the sweet wood of new paneling, all layered over something faintly chemical that you've stopped noticing, the way you stop hearing the refrigerator. Janet taps her cigarette on the Bakelite ashtray shaped like a duck. The duck does not appear to have opinions about this, but the look on the duck's face is not nothing. The 4th hand goes badly. Mrs. Carlson bids 2 hearts with a hand that has no business bidding anything. She plays it out anyway, cheerfully, moving through the tricks with a calm that is either confidence or meprobamate or the 3rd gin and tonic, possibly all 3 working in a formation nobody has studied. The 1960 Annals of Internal Medicine would eventually estimate about 1.5 million Americans physically dependent on meprobamate at any given time. That study is 2 years away. Tonight there are just cards and the duck ashtray and Joan quietly winning. Sometime after 10, Mrs. Garfield, that's the 4th. You've been calling her Mrs. Garfield since October and she's never corrected you, goes upstairs to use the phone. She comes back down, smoothing her skirt, and says her husband is fine. He was just reading. Nobody asks reading what. There is a social contract here that runs entirely on the honor system, and the honor system is holding. You lose the rubber. Mrs. Carlson pats your hand with genuine sympathy and goes to fix everyone a last drink. The paneling is warm in the light from the bar. Outside, it's 22 degrees and the street is quiet, and all the houses look the same, which was a selling point. You begin pouring at 5:28, 2 minutes ahead of schedule because the schedule is internal, and nobody enforces it but everybody keeps it. The bottle of Old Fitzgerald lives on the second shelf of the family bar in the den, behind a small leaded glass door that does not lock. You pour 2 fingers into a heavy tumbler. You pour 2 fingers into a second heavy tumbler. The first one is for your husband, who is currently somewhere on the Long Island Expressway. The second one is also for your husband, just earlier. The bar itself came with the house. Not metaphorically, it's on the floor plan, listed between the utility closet and the linen storage, in the same neutral font. 35% of homes built in planned developments between 1952 and 1960 include one as a standard feature. You didn't choose it any more than you chose the kitchen sink. It has a small stainless rail, 4 mismatched stools, and a cork-lined cabinet that smells permanently of vermouth. The bar is not an amenity, it's infrastructure. Let's talk about 5:30. It is not a time. It is a verdict on the day, returned promptly, by you, against you, with no opposing counsel. 5:30 is not arbitrary. The kids are fed or nearly fed, the casserole is in or has already made its escape from the oven, and the particular quality of afternoon light through the aluminum-framed window has shifted from golden to grey in a way that seems to require a response. You set both glasses on the bar top. The ice tray has been refilled, which means someone planned ahead, and that someone was you. A 1957 Distilled Spirits Institute survey found suburban household consumption of distilled spirits running about 40% higher than in urban neighborhoods of comparable income. Nobody in the survey seemed particularly alarmed by this. The report describes it as reflecting the spacious entertainment culture of the new suburbs. Spacious entertainment culture. The family bar knows exactly what it is. It doesn't say. By 5:45, Dave Kowalski from 3 houses down has materialized in the den the way Dave always materializes, without a jacket, holding a Sports Illustrated as if he just wandered in from his own living room by ambient drift. He sets the magazine on the bar and adjusts it slightly, with the focused authority of a man rearranging a document he hasn't read, calm, deliberate, and faintly ceremonial. You hand him a glass without being asked. He accepts it without thanking you. This is not rudeness. This is the choreography. The math goes like this. Your husband has had 2 drinks on the train. The bar car on the Oyster Bay line operates on an honor system, and nobody honors it more than commuters, and will have 2 more at home before dinner. You'll have 1 during cooking, 1 with dinner, 1 after. The kids are watching Howdy Doody on the RCA Victor in the living room, the set warm to the touch and faintly smelling of ozone, emitting the tinny single-speaker sound of a civilization in progress. The TV has been on since 3:30. Nobody turned it on. It simply came on, the way the bar simply exists and the drinks simply pour. Of course, you're also holding a cigarette. 70% of men aged 25 to 44 smoke in 1954, and the women in their living rooms are not far behind. The Chesterfield burns in the amber glass ashtray on the bar's lower shelf. The combined air in the den right now, cigarette smoke, the yeasty warmth of bourbon, new synthetic carpet fibers outgassing something nobody has named yet, is a specific smell that will take decades to fully disappear from American interiors. At the moment, it just smells like Tuesday. The second round pours at 6:15. Your husband has arrived, kissed you somewhere in the vicinity of the left ear, and is now standing at the bar in his work shirt with his tie loosened in the specific way that signals the workday has officially ended and the evening workday is beginning. The bourbon doesn't pause the evening, it paces it. Both of you know this dance too well. You restock the family bar on the first Saturday of the month, which means you keep a small written inventory in the kitchen drawer next to the green stamps. The inventory has 14 lines. 14 lines is what the family bar holds: bourbon, scotch, gin, vodka, vermouth dry, vermouth sweet, sherry, bitters, club soda, tonic, 3 mixers, and 1 bottle of creme de menthe that has been there since the housewarming and shows no sign of moving. The family bar takes up roughly the same square footage as a child's bed. The creme de menthe, nobody bought it. It materialized at the housewarming in 1953 in the hands of a woman named Phyllis Hadworth, who brought it because she'd read something in a magazine, and it has been here ever since, too full to throw away and too green to serve. It sits in the back left corner like a quiet ambassador from a country nobody wants to visit. The bottle hasn't moved in 4 years. You've dusted around it. The bar itself came with the house, or almost did. Roughly 35% of planned suburban developments built between 1952 and 1960 included a built-in or freestanding family bar as a standard design feature, same category as the dishwasher rough-in and the attached garage. Not an upgrade, a given. The architect didn't ask if you drank. He assumed the same way he assumed you'd need a lawn. Your neighbour Gary Whitmore has a full-size rolling cart, chrome-railed with a glass shelf and a built-in ice bucket. He wheels it out on Friday evenings with the same ceremony a sommelier uses, slow, reverent, and entirely unwarranted. He has explained the proper temperature for gin 3 times this year. The 3rd time, he did it with a small thermometer. The thermometer has a leather case. Gary keeps 14 bottles on the rolling cart. You keep 14 on the inventory. The suburb runs on a social calendar that asks both of you to be ready for the Friday drop-in, the Saturday bridge club, the Tuesday casserole exchange that ends a little warmer than it started. Distilled spirits consumption in suburban households runs about 40% higher than in urban households of comparable income. Gary keeps a small spiral notebook on the rolling cart for noting which bottles run low. The notebook is half full. A monthly supply keeps itself somewhere between $20 and $30 at the grocery store, depending on whether anyone's been into the scotch. This is a line item. It sits in the household budget between the car payment and the lawn fertilizer, which is also a line item, and which also nobody discusses as optional. You do the restock in the morning before the kids are up, which means you're standing in the kitchen at 7:45 with a list, counting bottles the way a pharmacist counts tablets, clinically, without ceremony, checking what's low and what needs replacing. The bourbon is always low, the sherry is never low. The bitters haven't moved since Thanksgiving, which means either nobody's making Manhattans or Dave Kowalski has been making Manhattans exclusively at his own house and not telling you. The inventory is a small piece of paper folded twice and stored next to the S&H green stamps, because that is where small important papers go in this house. You cross out numbers and write new numbers. The paper has been refolded so many times it's starting to go soft at the crease. It is, in its way, a household document as serious as the mortgage. Phyllis Hadworth, for what it's worth, switched to meprobamate in 1956. She says it's calmer. She says it's what her doctor recommended for her nerves. She still brings a bottle to parties when she doesn't know what else to bring, because some habits outlast their original context. Last month it was a Beaujolais. Before that, it was an ambrosia salad in a covered dish that arrived warm and left half-eaten. She is consistent in the gesture even when the object changes. You appreciate this about her. The creme de menthe has 4 inches left in the bottle. At the current rate of consumption, which is 0, it will be there when you sell the house. You light the first one before you have fully woken up, because the pack lives next to the percolator and the lighter lives next to the pack, and the entire routine is geographically arranged to require nothing of you but a hand. The brand is Pall Mall. It has been Pall Mall since 1949. You smoke roughly 23 of them per day, give or take a social evening, which puts you slightly below average for an American woman your age, and exactly on average for a Levittown woman your age. By 8 in the morning, your kitchen holds a particular blend. Percolator steam, cigarette smoke, the synthetic warmth of the new carpet drifting in from the living room, and something faintly chemical that is either the cleaning product under the sink or the curtains off-gassing in a way they will do for another 4 years. Nobody comments on this. It is just what a room smells like. The smell is present, warm, slightly acrid, and entirely familiar, like the house itself has taken up smoking. By 1954, a Gallup poll found 58% of American adults smoked. Among men aged 25 to 44, the exact demographic moving into the new suburbs at exactly this moment, the number was closer to 70%. Your husband lights his first one before his shoes are on. Your neighbour Barbara Fitch lights hers over the sink while rinsing the breakfast plates. Someone is always smoking in every room of every house on the block, at every hour, and the cumulative effect is that the entire suburb exists inside a faint permanent haze that nobody can see because they've been inside it since the morning they moved in. The pack costs 25 cents from a vending machine. There are vending machines in the pharmacy, in the lobby of the new pediatrician's office, in the waiting room of the dentist. The dentist smokes. Your pediatrician smokes during your child's checkup, which he does with the practiced ease of a man who has never once been asked to stop. The cigarette is social infrastructure. It is also, technically, what the Tobacco Industry Research Committee formed in January 1953 with a budget of about $1.3 million a year has been quietly insisting requires further scientific study before any conclusions can be drawn. Clarence Cook Little, the geneticist who chairs the TIRC, sits at a desk in a Midtown office reviewing a new grant proposal from a researcher at Sloan Kettering. He marks the proposal with a small, soft pencil. He has marked many proposals with the same pencil. The pencil is on its 3rd refill. Dr. Little doesn't deny that cigarettes cause cancer. He funds research designed to ensure that nobody can yet confirm that they do. The pencil agrees. The pencil keeps writing. Meanwhile, you finish cigarette number 7 around 11, while waiting for the percolator to finish its 2nd cycle, and you don't think about any of this. There is no reason to. Your doctor smokes Chesterfields, and last March he told you that your lungs sounded clear as a bell. He said this while lighting up. You found this reassuring, which is exactly what it was designed to make you feel. The Pall Mall itself is a longer cigarette. American Tobacco Company's selling point is that the extra length filters the smoke, which is not strictly accurate but sounds like it should be. Dolores Ingram down the street switched to filtered Kents on the same logic, which involves a plug of something called micronite, which is made partly from asbestos, which is a detail that is not on the packaging. Filtered cigarettes outsell unfiltered for the first time in 1957. The filter is reassurance made physical. It is the wellness era of cigarettes, and this is not a joke. You eat dinner at 6:45 on a folding metal tray balanced on your knees, facing the Philco, which is on. The Philco is always on. The Philco is on the way the lights are on, the same way the refrigerator is running, the same way the lawn is growing, as a background condition of the house that nobody decided and nobody can turn off without explaining themselves. Tonight is Sid Caesar. Tomorrow is Sid Caesar. Last night was Sid Caesar. You have stopped really watching the Philco. The Philco has not stopped really watching you. In 1948, there were 172,000 television sets in the entire country. By 1955, there were 36 million. By 1960, 90% of American homes had at least one. The furniture rearranged itself to face the screen the way sunflowers rearranged to face the sun, except sunflowers chose this. The Eames chair turned toward the cabinet, the sofa pivoted, the fireplace, in a room corner, went politely silent. The average household has the television on for 5 hours and 7 minutes a day by 1959. That's not viewing, that's cohabitation. The average suburban child watches 27 hours a week, which is more hours than a part-time job, except the part-time job is Milton Berle in a dress and nobody files a W-2. Your children sit cross-legged on the synthetic carpet, close enough to the screen that their faces take on the colour of whatever channel is on. The 2 1-inch RCA Victor is warm to the touch and smells faintly of ozone. The smell of something burning that isn't quite burning. The food on the folding tray is a TV dinner, and the TV dinner is not a meal so much as a commitment to the premise that eating and watching are the same activity. Swanson introduced the frozen tray in 1953. By 1955, they're selling 25 million a year. The compartments keep things from touching. Peas here, potatoes here, a small quantity of turkey that is pale, processed, and faintly philosophical, having crossed a line between poultry and material. The tray is aluminum. It comes out of the oven at 425 degrees. You have burned your thumb on it every single time. And yet the real dinner situation isn't Swanson. The real dinner situation is that you made a hot dish, which is what the Midwest calls a casserole, which is what the whole country calls a casserole, which is what Campbell's Soup calls a business opportunity. The 1955 green bean casserole, cream of mushroom soup, French fried onions, frozen green beans, is prepared in an estimated 30 million American households within 5 years of its invention. 30 million. A woman named Dorcas Riley invented it in a test kitchen in Camden, New Jersey, in 45 minutes, and now it is everywhere, every Thanksgiving, forever, holding its shape with the quiet confidence of something that knows it has won. Meanwhile, a pharmaceutical sales representative named Dale has come by the family doctor's office this week. Dale has left behind a handsome leather notepad, 2 boxes of sample packaging, and a sense of optimism about the new sedative line that your doctor finds genuinely persuasive. The samples are free. The prescription is easy. The dinner is ready. The Philco is on. Now, your neighbour Connie sits 2 houses down in the same approximate position. Folding tray, Philco, synthetic carpet, a glass of something. Connie's doctor is different from your doctor. Connie's doctor doesn't know your doctor. Neither of them knows the third doctor, the one who saw Connie in October about the sleeping situation. The medicine cabinet in Connie's bathroom holds 4 prescriptions and a bottle of Bayer. They don't interact. Technically is doing a lot of work in that sentence. The screen throws light across the rearranged living room. Sid Caesar does something physical and the audience laughs at a volume the single speaker can't really contain, so the laugh comes out tinny and slightly urgent, like applause from an adjacent room. You eat the hot dish. You eat the compartmentalized turkey. You watch the light. The Philco doesn't ask anything of you except that you stay. You take the Doridan at 9 sharp. because Dr. Pierce said it works best taken 90 minutes before you intend to be asleep, and you intend to be asleep at 10:30, the way you have intended to be asleep at 10:30 for the entire span of your adult life. The Doridan is a small green tablet shaped like a tiny football. It came in a brown bottle with no warning label. The warning label, in fairness, has not been invented yet. You swallow it with the last sip of your second bourbon. The brown bottle sits in the medicine cabinet next to the meprobamate, which is next to the phenobarbital, which is next to the anisin, which is next to a sample bottle of something the pharmaceutical rep left for Dr. Pierce in November, and Dr. Pierce passed along to you in December with a cheerful "try this." The cabinet door doesn't close all the way anymore. It has stopped trying. You and the cabinet door have reached an understanding. Glutathione, that's the clinical name for Doridan, got FDA approval in 1954, which means it is 6 years old, which means nobody has been taking it long enough to generate a truly comprehensive picture of what happens when you stop. A detail that does not concern you, because you have no plans to stop. You have plans to sleep, tonight and tomorrow night, and the night after that, at 10:30, as God and Dr. Pierce intended. The thing about Doridan is it works. That is the honest part. 20 minutes after the small green tablet and the last of the bourbon, the edges of the room go quiet, neat, and cooperative. Not dreamy, not cinematic, just willing. The lamp stops insisting on itself. The hum of the refrigerator from down the hall recedes to something you could almost describe as polite. Even the drapes, which have always hung slightly wrong, seem to have resolved their position. It's a very organized feeling. Pharmaceutical companies in 1958 are extremely good at organized feelings. The Miltown handles the day, the Doridan handles the night. Somewhere in the middle is the bourbon, which is not prescribed but is also, in its way, prescribed. The 1957 Distilled Spirits Institute will later report that suburban households drink about 40% more distilled spirits than urban households of the same income, which is the kind of statistic that sounds alarming until you spend 1 week in a suburb and then it sounds like a rounding error. Down the street, a neighbour named Gerald Fitch sits in his den with a scotch and the tail end of The Tonight Show, doing the same math you are doing, arriving at the same 10:30 conclusion, taking his own small pill from his own brown bottle. Gerald doesn't know what you take. You don't know what Gerald takes. Dr. Pierce knows what both of you take, in theory, though Gerald also sees a doctor. Kaufman in the next town over for the insomnia specifically. Gerald tips his glass at the television set before he turns it off. The set glows orange for a moment after the picture goes dark, like a last opinion, then fades. The Doridan moves through your bloodstream at its own pace, which is a slower pace than the bourbon suggested. The bourbon has a confidence about it. The Doridan is methodical. Between the two of them, they are managing a negotiation you are not fully party to, somewhere behind your sternum, and the outcome will be approximately 6 hours of sleep that leaves you faintly thick in the morning, which Dr. Pierce has acknowledged and described as a settling-in period for the past 11 months. You put down the glass. The ice has mostly melted. The carpet is that particular mid-century shade of green that made sense in the showroom and has been quietly questioning that decision ever since. The house makes its small sounds, the furnace cycling, a door somewhere not quite latched, the specific creak of the second stair that you have meant to fix for 2 years and have decided instead to simply know about. You know about the stair. The stair knows you know. Somewhere between 9:15 and 9:40, the Doridan finishes its opening argument, and you stand, and the floor is slightly more floor than usual. You turn off the lamp. The living room goes dark except for the thin strip of porch light under the front door, 10:30. As intended. You wake up at 2:17 with your eyes wide open and the certainty, immediate and complete, that you will not be returning to sleep on your own. The seconal is in the medicine cabinet. The medicine cabinet is 14 feet from the bed. You make the trip in the dark, because turning on a light would mean fully waking up, and fully waking up at this point is a tactical defeat. You take 1 capsule, you stand at the sink for a moment, looking at yourself. You decide, after some deliberation, to take a second one. The seconal is red, a deep, pharmaceutical red, the colour of something that means business. The capsule was prescribed by Dr. Harmon 3 months ago for what he called situational sleeplessness, which is a phrase that sounds temporary and is not. His office is 12 minutes away by car, He doesn't know about the meprobamate, which was prescribed by Dr. Castellano, who doesn't know about the Doridan, which was prescribed by Dr. Harmon's colleague filling in for a Tuesday. The medicine cabinet is a group project. Nobody is in the group. Seconal slows everything. Your breathing, your heartbeat, the speed at which your brain decides it needs to continue being anxious about the Moretta's dog and whether the gutters are clean. It does this efficiently, without ceremony, in about 20 minutes. The problem is that 20 minutes is not right now, and right now is when you need it. So you stand at the sink a little longer, in the dark, in a house that is doing its own version of breathing, the furnace clicking, the refrigerator cycling, the floorboard outside the children's room settling with the quiet authority of something that has heard everything. Ruth Bunnell of Westport, Connecticut, had a medicine cabinet not unlike this one. In February of 1961, she was 38 years old. 3 different physicians had prescribed her Seconal, meprobamate, and phenobarbital. None of them knew about the others. The certificate lists the cause of death as combined barbiturate and sedative toxicity, which is a way of saying the cabinet won. You stand in the dark for another minute with the water running cold over your wrist. Then you close the cabinet. You pad back to bed. The second Seconal is a choice you'll feel in the morning, a thickness behind the eyes, a slow drag through the first hour that no coffee fully corrects. You've learned to budget for it. You've learned to schedule the slow morning on days when the slow morning is survivable, and to take only one on the nights before anything that requires you to operate machinery or make a decision of consequence. This is not a system anyone taught you. You assembled it yourself from experience, which is basically a clinical trial with a sample size of 1 and no oversight committee. The room is quiet. The 2-1-inch RCA Victor in the living room has been off for hours, but you can still feel the faint warmth it leaves behind when you walk past, warm to the touch even now, faintly smelling of ozone and heated dust. Earlier tonight it ran for 5 hours and 7 minutes. This is, statistically, exactly average. The television doesn't know this. The television doesn't know anything. It just performs its absence loudly once it's off, the way a party becomes a different room the instant the last guest closes the door. The Seconal begins, eventually, to do what Seconal does. The edges of the room soften. The gutters become less urgent. Doctor. Harmon's handwriting on the prescription bottle is somewhere in the dark behind you and has already faded to a concept. You pull the blanket up. The house makes its sounds. 2. Me becomes 3 a.m. without announcing the transition. You sleep. You arrive at the Holy Cross Gymnasium at 7 on the second Tuesday of the month, wearing a knee-length skirt and a small structured handbag and the specific kind of fixed expression that suburban women have developed for occasions involving folding chairs. The PTA meeting will run 90 minutes. The PTA meeting always runs 90 minutes. There will be coffee in a percolator the size of a small barrel. There will be store-bought cookies arranged on a plate, and there will be Mrs. Donnelly, who will speak about the bake sale for approximately 22 of those minutes. The coffee has been sitting in that percolator since 5:30, which means it is now less a beverage and more a position on coffee. You take a cup anyway because the cup gives your hands something to do, and in this room, hands with nothing to do are a liability. A woman named Barbara, not your Barbara, the other one, with a houndstooth jacket, pours herself a second cup and smiles at you with the focused warmth of someone who slept exactly as well as you did last night. Neither of you mentions it. The meeting opens with the minutes from last month, which nobody has read. Mr. Fielding, the principal, stands at the front of the gymnasium in a brown suit that fits him like an apology and thanks everyone for coming out on a school night. He says this every month. You've started to wonder if he's reading from a card, Mrs. Donnelly takes the floor at 7:14, prepared, exhaustive, and quietly indomitable. She's brought a handwritten list. You can see from 3 rows back that the list is 2 pages. The bake sale is in April. It is currently February. The woman to your left, whose name you've heard twice and still cannot retain, shifts in her folding chair and produces a compact from her purse. She checks her face. The face is fine. She checks it again anyway. The compact has opinions about February. You took the meprobamate at 5:30, before dinner, because 5:30 is when the day accumulates in a specific way that has no clinical name but is absolutely a condition. By 7 o'clock it's worked into a kind of medium softness, like the world has been turned down 1 notch. Not off, just 1 notch. Mrs. Donnelly's voice arrives at a slight remove, which is honestly the correct distance for Mrs. Donnelly's voice. Around the room, Barbara in the houndstooth jacket folds her hands very neatly on the agenda. Connie, 3 rows up, is taking notes in a careful slanted hand on the back of her grocery list. The woman with the compact has closed her compact. The 1959 Cook County audit, 6 pharmacies, 27% of all prescriptions filled were sedatives and tranquilizers, didn't sort by occasion. The room is sorting by occasion just fine. A woman named Connie, 3 rows up, raises her hand and asks whether the bake sale will conflict with the spring concert. Mrs. Donnelly checks her list. Her list does not cover this. A small negotiation begins. The percolator ticks once in the corner, deeply indifferent to the outcome. The cookies are shortbread, not homemade, you can tell from the uniform edges, which have the particular precision of a machine that does not love you. You take one because it's there. You don't taste it. Exactly. It's just something that happens in your mouth while Mrs. Donnelly locates page 2. At 8:14, Mr. Fielding wraps up with a reminder about parking during the spring concert, and everyone stands with the collective relief of people who have survived something minor but real. You find your coat. Barbara, your Barbara, appears at your elbow and says, "Wasn't that something?" And you say, "It really was," and both statements are completely hollow and completely understood. You walk out into the February parking lot, which smells like exhaust and cold asphalt, and faintly of whatever lawn treatment the neighbour 2 houses down put down last week, even though it is February, and the grass is not growing, and the product has opinions about ambition. You drive home. The Miltown is still doing its one notch of work. The house is quiet. The television is off for once, which makes the living room look slightly larger and slightly sadder than usual. You set your handbag on the kitchen counter and stand there for a moment in your coat, not yet ready to begin the thing where you get ready for bed. You drive to Southdale, which is in Edina, which is a 40-minute commitment in each direction, because Southdale is the first fully enclosed mall in America, and it is climate-controlled, and it is 68 degrees inside, no matter what month it is outside. You enter through the south entrance, which dumps you into a courtyard with a fountain and a small cluster of indoor trees that do not technically know it is December. Victor Gruen designed it. Victor Gruen wanted you to have a civic experience. You are about to spend $47, 68 degrees, year-round. Outside it is either baking or frozen, depending on the season, and neither condition is negotiable. In here, the temperature has been decided. The air smells like synthetic fibre, soft pretzels, and the faint mineral note of recirculated water from the fountain, which is running continuously and serving no civic function, except to suggest that this is a place where things flow. Piped music arrives from no visible source at no particular volume. It is simply present, the way a smell is present. You didn't notice it until just now, and now you can't stop noticing it. The trees stand in their planters, green, indoor, and faintly bewildered, looking mildly confused. Victor Gruen thought he was building the Vienna Ringstrasse. He imagined community, spontaneous public life, a gathering place for the new American city that wasn't a city. What he built was a weatherproof room with a Woolworths and a parking lot for 900 cars. There's a small gap between those two things. Gruen would eventually spend the rest of his life publicly disowning the mall format, which is a very Viennese response to having invented something. A woman named Doris is in the housewares section of Dayton's department store, methodically lifting each casserole dish and setting it back down with the focused deliberation of someone who drove 40 minutes to do exactly this. She lifts, she sets, she lifts again. The dish she came for has a lid that fits. This is a significant criterion. She has been here 25 minutes, and she's made a decision twice, and unmade it once. And the salesman, a young man named Gerald, has stopped hovering because Gerald has learned which customers need Gerald and which customers need space. And Doris needs space. You are looking at curtains. You did not come for curtains. You came for a small chrome toaster on the 4th floor of Dayton's, and between you and the toaster were the linens, the lamps, the housewares aisle with Doris, and now this curtain rack. The rack is busy. You hold a swatch up to the light. The swatch is olive green. You didn't need curtains. And yet, here you are. The Diners Club card came out in 1950. Bank Americard launched in 1958. Your department store has its own charge account, which is not quite the same thing but operates on a similar understanding that the purchase and the payment don't need to happen in the same week. This is a relatively new idea. It has caught on with the speed of something that was apparently overdue. You can have the curtains now. The bill arrives in 30 days, in an envelope that is reassuringly thin. Now, the food court doesn't exist yet, but there's a lunch counter, and you sit down at it because you've been walking for 90 minutes and your feet have developed opinions. A woman 2 stools down is eating a grilled cheese and reading a magazine with a recipe on the cover, something involving Campbell's cream of mushroom soup applied to things that did not originally involve soup. She tears the page out carefully, folds it, puts it in her purse. She doesn't look up. She is very efficient about this. The grilled cheese is halfway gone before she's finished folding. You leave through the same entrance you came in. The parking lot is enormous and flat, and the December air hits you like a personal grievance after the 68 degrees. You find your car after approximately 3 minutes of quiet searching that you will not mention to anyone. The curtains are in a bag. Doris got the casserole dish. Gerald is already helping someone else. Victor Gruen wanted a civic experience. You got one. And it was just 68 degrees and fluorescent lit and contained a surprisingly effective curtain display. You fill out the application at the courtesy desk on the 2nd floor, between ladies' wear and small appliances, and the woman behind the counter compliments your handwriting twice in the span of 3 minutes. The form asks for your husband's name, your husband's employer, your husband's annual salary, and, in a small box at the bottom, your name. You sign at the bottom. The card arrives by mail 11 days later in a small embossed envelope. It is your card. Your husband's name is on it. This is not a contradiction. This is, in fact, the entire 1950s in a sentence. The Sears charge account is not a credit card. It's a monthly billing arrangement between Sears and your household, which is a legal entity your husband heads and you run. The distinction matters to Sears. It does not appear to matter to the form. Diners Club introduced its card in 1950 for men who ate lunch on someone else's dime. Bank Americard followed in 1958 for people who needed to buy things they could not currently afford to buy, which turned out to be most of America. The Sears charge account is older, more domestic, and somehow more intimate, a direct line between the courtesy desk and your kitchen, formalized on cardstock. The card transforms the act of wanting something into the act of having something, with a small invoice arriving at the end of the month to remind you that those are different things. A woman named Harriet, standing at the appliance counter on the 3rd floor, runs one finger along the chrome edge of a new automatic washer with the focused calm of someone appraising a diamond. She doesn't look at the price tag. She looks at the salesman. He nods. This is the entire transaction. The invoice arrives later. The invoice has opinions about timing, but it does not raise them until the 14th of the month. By 1960, consumer credit outstanding in the United States sits at roughly $56 billion, up from $8 billion in 1946. This is what it looks like from inside a Sears in suburban Cook County on a Tuesday afternoon. Harriet's finger on the chrome edge of an appliance she doesn't technically own yet, moving with the quiet authority of a woman who has already decided. She lifts the finger. She does not wipe the chrome. The salesman does not wipe the chrome. The washer goes home with her that afternoon. The embossed envelope sits on your kitchen counter for a moment after you open it. The card is smaller than you expected. It has a certain official weight, the weight of a thing that has been processed, reviewed, and approved by people who checked your husband's income twice and your name once. A small printed slip inside says to sign the back immediately. You sign it in the same handwriting the woman at the courtesy desk complimented. Your signature is the smallest thing on the card. It is also the only thing on the card that is actually yours. Of course, none of this feels like an institution while it's happening. It feels like convenience. It feels like not having to carry cash to Sears on a Saturday when the dryer has stopped making the right noises and you need a replacement before the laundry achieves full autonomy. The charge account is, in this specific way, indistinguishable from a kindness. The bill arrives and it is manageable. Next month it is slightly less manageable. The month after that it has a late fee. The late fee is $2.40. The card sits in your purse, small, embossed, and faintly authoritative. The card doesn't mention this on the front. The front just has your husband's name, embossed, in capital letters, with a quiet confidence that the whole thing was always going to work out fine. You stop at the Esso on the way home and the machine is right there, mounted to the wall between the men's room and the air pump, 6 rows of small chrome levers like a pipe organ for tar. 25 cents a pack. 23 brands, including, baffling but undeniable, 3 brands sold specifically for women in a slimmer pack with a slightly pinker color scheme as if the cancer reads gender. You feed a quarter into the slot. The pack drops with a small heavy thunk like a deposit at a bank. By 1954, 58% of American adults smoke. Among men your age, 25 to 44, new suburb, new mortgage, new commute, it's closer to 70%. Which means if you're standing at this machine and you don't smoke, you are statistically the strange one. The man behind you at the pump almost certainly does. The attendant wiping down the windshield almost certainly does. The machine doesn't care either way. It just holds its levers out like it's offering you something you already decided to take. Every room you enter has it. The office. The waiting room at the pediatrician. The den on a Tuesday evening. The smell is a permanent furniture element, a warm, slightly acrid layer that settles into wool and synthetic carpet fiber, and the upholstery of every new car interior within about 6 weeks of ownership. You stop smelling it the same way you stop hearing the refrigerator. It's not that it goes away, it's that the baseline shifts up to meet it. At the cocktail party on Friday, and there will be one, there's always one, the combined atmosphere of a 1958 living room at 7:30 p.m. contains cigarette smoke, perfume, the yeasty warmth of mixed drinks, and the off-gassing of new synthetic carpet. The carpet is losing, everything else is winning. A woman named Lorraine holds a Chesterfield loosely between 2 fingers, composed, articulate, and entirely undeterred, while making a point about her contractor, and the ash grows to a length that really should be addressed, and isn't, because Lorraine is not done with the point about the contractor. The Tobacco Industry Research Committee formed in January 1953. Dr. Clarence Cook Little, its scientific director, sits in a small office in Midtown Manhattan with a soft pencil and a stack of grant proposals. He spends about $1.3 million a year approving studies that conclude more research is needed. The pencil agrees. The pencil never has to write the other sentence. The science on smoking and cancer is in the journals on the shelf behind him. The pencil keeps the asterisk attached. Back at the machine, you pull the tab. The cellophane gives cleanly. The foil peels back with a small sound like a letter being opened, which in a way it is. It's correspondence from a decision you made about 10 years ago and have been answering ever since. You tap one out against your palm. The ritual is so established it doesn't feel like a ritual. It just feels like the next thing you do after stopping at the Esso. The match flares, briefly overperforms, settles. The first inhale is a full body thing. Your shoulders drop about half an inch. The commute recedes slightly. The house, the mortgage, the 14-year contractor dispute Lorraine is going to tell you about on Friday, all of it shifts into a softer register. This is what 25 cents buys. Not the cigarette, the pause around it. You get back in the car. The pack goes on the dash, which is where it lives. The smell is already in the seat. You drive out to the diner on Route 9 because Mrs. Henderson said a man named Wally would be there, and Mrs. Henderson does not say things lightly about Route 9. The diner is one of those long aluminum buildings shaped like a railway car that have decided to stay where they are. Inside, there are 6 truckers, 2 waitresses, a jukebox playing Patti Page, and Wally. Wally is sitting in the 3rd booth from the back, drinking coffee, eating a piece of lemon meringue pie, and selling, in a quiet, professional way, 14-gram bottles of Seconal. How you got here is its own question, not Route 9, the other here. The one where a Senate subcommittee found in 1956 that 46 tons of barbiturates were being diverted from legal channels into informal trade every year, 46 tons, through truck stops and gas stations and, apparently, 3rd booths from the back. The grey market isn't a shadowy criminal underworld. It's a man with clean fingernails and a nearly finished slice of pie. Wally slides a small brown bottle across the formica without looking up. He has the unhurried manner of someone who has done this many times and expects to do it many more. His coffee cup is full. He keeps it full. The waitress named Carol refills it every 8 minutes without being asked, because she has timed Wally the way you time a reliable appliance. The pills are Seconal, red capsules. You know the colour because Mrs. Henderson described them over bridge last Tuesday, between hands, in the same tone she uses to recommend a good dry cleaner. This is the Suburbs supply chain. It runs through casserole dishes and coffee cups and Patti Page songs, and the inventory ledger, if there were one, would be written on the back of a placemat. By 1950, American pharmaceutical companies are already producing 24 barbiturate pills per year for every man, woman, and child in the country. That's the legal supply. The one moving through Wally is extra. California reported in 1953 that barbiturates showed up in roughly 28% of all accidental poisoning deaths in the state. The state filed the report. The prescriptions kept going. You didn't come out here because your doctor refused you. You came out here because your doctor is Dr. Farwell. And Dr. Farwell is a kind man who gives you what you ask for and asks very few follow-up questions. And Dr. Farwell already gave you meprobamate and phenobarbital, and the phenobarbital makes you feel like furniture, and what you want is to sleep through the night without the specific 3 a.m. quality of a house that's completely quiet and still somehow too loud. Wally has a solution for that. The solution is red and costs less than a movie ticket. Outside, a truck pulls in, its diesel engine cutting off in stages. The driver comes in, nods at Wally, orders pie. There's a brief exchange near the register. Nothing changes except that the driver's jacket pocket is slightly fuller than it was. The jukebox moves on to something by Doris Day. Carol refills the coffee. The pie is lemon meringue because it is always lemon meringue at a place like this, assertive, yellow, and entirely committed to itself. You put the bottle in your purse, next to your compact and your grocery list. It fits there without drama. On the drive home, the leaded gasoline smell drifts in through the vent window, that sweet, slightly acrid note that means the car is moving, and the car moving means you are free, at least for the length of Route 9. You turn onto your street. The lawns are trim. The houses are identical in the way that suggests agreement rather than accident. Mrs. Henderson's porch light is already on. You'll tell her Wally said hello. He didn't, but she'll appreciate it. You watch the hearings on the small set in the kitchen, the one with the slightly yellow picture tube, because you are also pulling a roast out of the oven, and the small set is the set that exists for situations like this. Senator Kefauver is on the screen. Senator Kefauver is from Tennessee. Senator Kefauver is wearing a coonskin cap on his desk like a paperweight, as a campaign device, and you cannot decide if it is charming or embarrassing or both. He is asking a man from Wallace Laboratories a question about meprobamate, and the man is, in the polite, professional way of these things, lying. The hearings are officially called the Subcommittee on Antitrust and Monopoly. The name is accurate. The subject is pharmaceutical pricing, and specifically the gap between what a drug costs to make and what your family doctor charges you to get it. Meprobamate costs Wallace Laboratories roughly 50 cents to produce per month's supply. You pay $3.50. The man from Wallace Laboratories explains that the difference covers research, development, and distribution. He says this without blinking. The coonskin cap sits there. A stenographer named Helen Markey types the answer into the record without pausing. Small, neat, unhurried strokes. She has typed identical answers from different men in similar suits for 3 months now. Her wrists do not feel the difference. Kefauver wants drug companies to justify their prices. He wants physicians to disclose when pharmaceutical sales reps have been in their offices. He wants someone somewhere to acknowledge that the same industry selling you tranquilizers is also paying your doctor a visit every few weeks with a bag of samples and a very warm handshake. Sales reps averaged about $340 a year per doctor in gifts and samples by 1959, a sum quietly substantial enough to function as a small annual retainer, paid in pens and golf tees and steak dinners that the doctor never quite categorized as either. The roast needs another 20 minutes. You turn the dial on the small set, which requires force, because the dial has opinions about Channel 2. The picture goes to snow. You turn it back. The man from Wallace Laboratories is still there, still explaining. He has now pivoted to the word innovation, which in this context means we made a pill that 1/3 of all American prescriptions are for, and we would prefer not to discuss the markup. A woman named Patricia Hollis is watching the same hearing on a larger set in Ridgewood, New Jersey, while organizing a recipe box she has been meaning to organize since March. Patricia isn't taking meprobamate. She's on phenobarbital, prescribed for what her doctor noted as nervous exhaustion, and she finds the hearings moderately interesting in the way you find a traffic jam on the other side of the highway interesting. A problem. Elsewhere, Patricia sets a card for green bean casserole in the front of the box and decides that counts as progress. The 1954 hearings don't produce new law. The pharmaceutical companies send more men in suits. The men in suits use the word innovation a great deal. A bill passes a subcommittee, gets amended, gets further amended, gets set aside. What comes out the other end is approximately nothing. 8 years from now, thalidomide will force the next hearing. Nothing adjacent to thalidomide will change. The roast comes out. You set it on the counter. The small set is still going, and Kefauver is now asking about a different drug entirely, something with a Latin name, and the man across the table is nodding slowly in the manner of someone who has already written the answer to this question with a lawyer. The coonskin cap hasn't moved. It will become a presidential campaign prop in 1956, which is a different kind of theatre but roughly the same kind of result. You call Dr. Felton at home on a Sunday afternoon because the baby has a fever of 102, and Dr. Felton arrives in 40 minutes, carrying a small black leather bag and wearing the same houndstooth jacket he wears to church, because he has come from church. He examines the baby on the kitchen table, which has been wiped down with a damp cloth in the 90 seconds between the phone call and his arrival. The baby has an ear infection. The baby will be fine. He writes 3 prescriptions on a small pad, only one of which is for the baby. The other 2 are not for the baby. One is for you, meprobamate, 30 pills, refillable, at roughly $3.50 for the month, which fits neatly between the bread and the dish soap on the grocery ledger. The other is for your husband, who isn't even in the room, who is watching football in the den with a cocktail already in his hand. Dr. Felton writes it from memory. He knows what your husband takes. Doctor. Felton has been your family's physician since 1951. He delivered your second child, he attended your mother-in-law's funeral, and shook every hand in the receiving line. He is not a careless man. He is, by every measure available to 1959, an excellent doctor, thorough, unhurried, and entirely present on a Sunday in his church jacket. The prescription pad is just part of the visit, the way the stethoscope is part of the visit. Nobody remarks on it. He sets the black bag on your counter while he writes, and you can see the top layer of its contents. The stethoscope coiled on top, a sample packet of something in a yellow envelope, a small glass jar with a metal lid. Doctor. Felton slides the sample packet toward you without comment. It's glutathione Doradin, FDA approved in 1954, and the pharmaceutical rep left a dozen of them at the office on Tuesday. The rep also left a monogrammed pen set and a calendar with hunting dogs on it. Dr. Felton kept the calendar. You are not, technically, a patient with a problem. You are a patient with a prescription, which is a subtly different category. The meprobamate is for what Dr. Felton wrote on the chart as nervous fatigue, which is a phrase that does a lot of work for a 2-word diagnosis. It covers insomnia, headaches, the persistent low hum of something not quite wrong but not quite right either. It covers the feeling of standing in a kitchen at 4 p.m. on a Sunday while your husband watches football and your baby screams and the casserole from last night is still sitting in the dish and you cannot fully explain why you haven't moved it. Nervous fatigue. It fits on one line. Your pharmacist, Mr. Dennis Ruiz, fills the meprobamate with the same mild efficiency he fills the baby's amoxicillin, alphabetized by surname, recorded in the same green ledger. He knows your name and your refill schedule and once, in November, quietly mentioned that Mrs. Paulson from 3 streets over had called asking if she could pick yours up by mistake. She couldn't. He just wanted you to know. Doctor. Felton buttons the bag and gives you instructions for the ear infection. Warm compress. The antibiotic twice daily with food. Call him Tuesday if the fever hasn't broken. He is at the door in under 15 minutes from arrival. In the driveway, he pauses to say something friendly to your husband through the den window, which your husband answers without standing up. The houndstooth jacket disappears around the side of the house. The 3 prescriptions sit on the counter next to the sample packet. The baby is already quieter. You will fill all 3 on Monday morning. This is not a decision. It is an errand. You let the children watch Howdy Doody after school the way other generations let their children play outside, as a baseline default that requires no decision from anyone. The set is in the living room. The children are on the rug. The rug is wall-to-wall and synthetic and has a slight chemical smell that the manufacturer described in advertising copy as the smell of newness. The youngest is 4. He has been watching 45 hours of television a week since he could sit up. Howdy Doody is teaching him about a clown named Clarabelle. This is, by 1956 standards, considered education. The set itself is a 2-1-inch RCA Victor, warmed to the touch by 3 in the afternoon, faintly smelling of ozone the way a small appliance does when it's been running all day and has decided that this is just its life now. You bought it in 1953 because the Mertz's 2 doors down had won, and the silence in your living room had started to feel like a statement. The furniture is arranged around it the way furniture used to be arranged around a fireplace. The fireplace still exists. Nobody looks at the fireplace. By 1959, the average American household has the television on for 5 hours and 7 minutes a day. Your household is not average. Your household is an overachiever. Nielsen didn't design its measurement scale with you specifically in mind, but you would have broken the curve. Beyond Howdy Doody, there is the Mickey Mouse Club. There is Lassie, who solves problems with a competence that puts the adult characters to mild shame. There is Sky King, which is about a rancher who also has a plane, which is exactly the level of ambition the era is selling. Between the programs, there are commercials for sugar-frosted flakes, for Ovaltine, for a cap gun that a boy named Tommy Whitfield receives for his birthday in a 30-second narrative arc that ends with Tommy's father tousling his hair with a confidence that says, "I have made the right purchase." Tommy grins. The can gun fires. The story resolves. Your youngest has absorbed roughly 2,000 of these 30-second narratives by his 5th birthday. He doesn't know it yet. He just knows what he wants. The older one, Patricia, 7, precise, and already constitutionally skeptical of clowns, sits slightly farther back from the screen than her brother, with the posture of someone monitoring a situation rather than enjoying it. She watches a woman in an apron demonstrate a blender on a daytime program and says, without looking away, "Do we have that?" You say you don't think so. She says, "We should." She goes back to watching. The blender is chrome. It has 5 speeds. The woman in the apron is smiling with a focus that suggests the blender is the culmination of something. By 1960, nearly 90% of American homes have at least one television set. In 1948, there were about 172,000 sets in the entire country. That's not a technology adoption curve. That's a door opening and everyone going through it simultaneously, and the door closing behind them, and nobody especially noticing the door. The television stays on after the children's programs end. It stays on through the evening news, which your husband watches from the good chair while holding a drink, and through whatever follows the news, and through whatever follows that. You fall asleep on the sofa at some point during the 11 o'clock program, and wake up to the test pattern, a geometric circle, a kind of bureaucratic snowflake, and the low, even tone the station plays when it has run out of content but hasn't yet decided to stop transmitting. The test pattern does not judge you for falling asleep. It is simply there, reliable, patient, emitting. You wake on a Tuesday and discover that you cannot stand up, which is a development you did not see coming, although in fairness you have not, lately, seen much of anything coming. Your hands are doing a thing your hands have not previously done, a small fine tremor, like the tremor of a teacup on a saucer, except that you are not holding a teacup. You ran out of Miltown on Sunday. You meant to refill on Monday. You forgot. The convulsions technically are not supposed to happen this fast. The convulsions technically are happening. The AMA released a warning about this in 1958. Not a recall. Not a restriction. A warning, which is a piece of paper a doctor reads once, in his office, between patients, and then files. The warning noted physical dependence, withdrawal seizures, the possibility of hallucinations, and in some cases death. Prescriptions kept rising after that. The warning was a speed bump. The machine had excellent suspension. The monthly supply cost $3.50. That's it. Less than the grocery run. Less than the bottle of scotch your husband picks up on Thursdays without being asked. You paid for it the same way you paid for dish soap, routinely, without thinking about it, because that is what you do with things you cannot imagine not having. Dr. Hennessy wrote the prescription. He is a pleasant man. He has written it 11 times now. He does not know about the phenobarbital that Dr. Carver prescribed in March, or the chloral hydrate that Dr. Rousseau suggested last October when you mentioned you weren't sleeping. Your medicine cabinet in 1958 holds 3 bottles from 3 doctors and a small rotating cast of unmarked tablets, each of them entirely correct on its own and entirely uncoordinated with the others. The convulsions pass. You are on the floor of the bedroom. The carpet is new, a synthetic fibre in a colour the catalogue called Harvest Wheat, which smells, even now, of its own manufacture. Patricia will be downstairs by 6:30. The 4-year-old will follow her at 6:31. You have approximately 28 minutes to get off the floor without explanation. You call Mrs. Dabrowski from across the street, who comes over in her housecoat and sits with the children because she has a standing arrangement with you for exactly this category of mourning, which neither of you has ever named. She adjusts the television set with the authority of someone who has adjusted a great many things, calm, capable, and faintly maternal. She doesn't ask questions. Mrs. Dabrowski brings a small bottle from her cardigan pocket, sets it on the kitchen counter without comment, and pours you a glass of water. The bottle is not hers, technically. It came from the Bridge Club. The Bridge Club has a fairly well-stocked rotating inventory. Mrs. Dabrowski unscrews the cap. She shakes one tablet into her palm and offers it to you with the casual, practiced grace of someone who has, on Thursday night, swapped bottles with Mrs. Henderson and Mrs. Paulson and the Carlsons. The handoff at the Bridge Club happens between a tuna casserole and a comment about the weather. Nobody calls it what it is. The 1956 Senate subcommittee found 46 tons of barbiturates diverted into the grey market every year, often through truck stops and gas stations. The truck stops didn't have Bridge Clubs. The Bridge Club had Mrs. Dabrowski. You are vertical by 7:15. The tremor has settled into something you could describe as a hum, present, manageable, the background frequency of a Tuesday. Patricia watches you from the doorway. She has her father's habit of watching without speaking, which is either perceptive or unsettling depending on the morning. This morning it is both. You smile at her in the way you have learned to smile when the situation requires a smile, which is a facial expression your face produces without much input from the rest of you now. She accepts it. She goes back to the television. The television does not require explanations. You read the article about Ruth Bunnell in the Westport News while standing at the kitchen counter, holding your coffee, not yet sitting down. Ruth Bunnell was 38. Ruth Bunnell lived 3 streets over. Ruth Bunnell took Seconal from one doctor, Meprobamate from another, and phenobarbital from a third, and Ruth Bunnell is, as of last Wednesday, no longer with us. The coroner has ruled her death accidental. The coroner's form has a small box marked accidental, and the coroner has ticked that box, and ticking that box closes the file. You set your coffee down. The counter is cold under your palm. You stand there another moment and you think about the 3 doctors. Dr. Hennessy, who wrote the meprobamate, and presumably 2 others you don't know the names of, and the thing you understand, standing here, is that not one of them did anything wrong by the form. They each wrote one prescription. They each wrote it correctly. They each had a good reason. The paperwork, in every single case, is clean. The prescription form in 1961 has lines for the patient's name, the drug, the dosage, the date, and the prescribing physician. There is no line for other prescribing physicians. There is no box that says what else she's taking. There is no column for what 3 of these in combination will do on a Tuesday night in February in a house on a quiet street. The form is thorough in the areas the form covers. The form covers what it covers. A year earlier, 6 suburban pharmacies in Cook County, Illinois were reviewed, and sedatives and tranquilizers made up 27% of all prescriptions filled, compared to 11% in Chicago proper. The suburb was running at more than twice the sedation rate of the city. Nobody flagged this. The number exists in a journal. The journal was filed. You know 3 women in this neighborhood who see more than one doctor. You know this not because anyone said so directly, but because Mrs. Dabrowski mentioned at the last Bridge Club that Dr. Russo was better for the nerves, and you filed that away in the same place you file everything about the nerves, which is a filing system you have become very good at maintaining. The suburb runs on distributed information of this kind. It's not a secret. It's not discussed. It is simply known, the way everyone knows which house has the loud dog and which corner gets icy in January. Margaret Finch, who lives on the cul-de-sac end of your street, leaves a casserole dish on the Bunnell doorstep the morning the article runs. Margaret does this without being asked, because this is what you do, and she is standing very straight while she sets it down, careful, upright, and faintly stricken, the way a person stands when they are not sure what their face is doing. The casserole dish has a green lid. She doesn't ring the bell. She sets it, and she walks back, and from your window you watch her cross the street with her arms folded against the cold. Nobody says what they're thinking. What they're thinking is that Ruth Bunnell had the same medicine cabinet most of them have, and Ruth Bunnell is the version of the story that ended in the coroner's small box. The rest of them are the versions still in progress. The Westport News article is 4 paragraphs. The 4th paragraph notes that Ruth Bunnell is survived by her husband Gerald and 2 children, ages 9 and 11. The article does not name the 3 doctors. The article does not mention the medicine cabinet. The article mentions that Ruth Bunnell was active in her community and is described by neighbours as warm and devoted. The article is very carefully 4 paragraphs long. You fold the paper. You don't throw it out. You put it at the bottom of the stack near the bread box, under Tuesday's TV listings and the Better Homes and Gardens supplement about spring curtain fabric. You put it there because you're not ready to throw it out and you're not ready to leave it on top. It sits under the curtain supplement for 3 days before you move it to the recycling. You read about the Tobacco Industry Research Committee in the paper, although you do not really read about it, because you are mostly looking at the bridge column on the facing page. The committee, the article says, has been funded since 1953 to investigate the link between cigarette smoking and various health concerns. The committee has a budget of $1.3 million a year. The committee is staffed by scientists. The committee is, in a quiet professional way, designed to never quite arrive at an answer. The article does not put it that way. The article does not need to. You light a cigarette while reading this. The irony does not register as irony. It registers as breakfast. What $1.3 million a year buys in 1953 is studies. Careful ones. Studies that identify gaps in the existing data, note methodological inconsistencies in other researchers' work, and conclude, with great professional seriousness, that more research is needed. The research is always needed. The research will always be needed. The budget renews on schedule. A researcher named Bert Mahaffey mails in his latest paper from a lab in Cambridge on a Friday afternoon in a plain manila envelope, addressed in the same careful blue ink he always uses. The paper is 42 pages. The conclusion is half a page. The half page is what the check pays for. A scientist named Clarence Cook little chairs the committee. He has credentials. He uses them the way a well-placed doily uses a table, to make the surface underneath look more respectable. Doctor. Little adjusts his reading glasses at a press conference, calm, credentialed, and faintly avuncular, clears his throat, and notes that the epidemiological data on smoking and cancer is, at this time, inconclusive. He says this calmly. He says it a lot. Meanwhile, the cigarette you are holding was made by one of the 6 major manufacturers who funded this committee. You didn't know that when you bought it. The pack was 25 cents from the machine in the drugstore lobby, right next to the magazine rack, right next to the rack with the Miltown display. The machine doesn't explain its affiliations. Neither does the pack. By 1954, 70% of American men aged 25 to 44 smoke. That is the exact demographic of the new suburbs, the men with the VA loans and the Levittown Cape Cods and the commuter rail tickets and the 2-car garages. They smoke at the office. They smoke in the car. They smoke at cocktail hour, which begins reliably at 5:30, with a cigarette in one hand and something from the family bar in the other. The combined air of this moment, Lucky Strike, Old Spice, synthetic carpet fibre, bourbon, is what 1958 smells like. You've stopped noticing it. The house has absorbed it into its walls the way wood absorbs moisture, and the walls do not complain. The children breathe it too. Nobody uses the phrase second-hand smoke yet. The phrase doesn't exist. The committee is, in part, why. Dr. Little, at his desk on a Tuesday, signs off on a researcher's response paper, raising small methodological doubts about a Sloan Kettering study. He uses the same soft pencil he always uses. He files the paper in the same green cabinet drawer. The cabinet drawer has 412 papers in it now. Every paper in it is technically accurate. Every paper in it is complete nonsense. Dr. Little closes it gently. You finish the article. You turn to the bridge column. North opens with 1 club and East overcools. You light another cigarette from the ember of the first one, without looking down, the way you might shift gears without checking your hand. The motion has been practiced into the body so completely it no longer consults you. Your fingers know what to do. Your fingers have always known. You are at the Coopers for an anniversary thing, and Bill Cooper, who is 6'1" and an account manager at Young & Rubicam, is asking you what you would like, And you make the social mistake of answering honestly. You say you are fine, thanks. You say you have had enough already, thanks. You say a glass of water would be lovely, thanks. Bill Cooper's smile does not move, but something behind his eyes has registered a small offence, the kind of offence that requires no language and travels immediately through the room. The room knows before you do. Marjorie Cooper, who is standing near the credenza holding a gin and tonic with both hands like it owes her something, catches the hesitation and adjusts her posture slightly. A man named Gerald Fitch, who you know from the Wednesday carpool, takes a sip of his bourbon and looks at the middle distance. Nobody says anything. The standing offer is to drink, and the standing assumption is that you will, because the bar cart is not decorative, it is structural. Roughly 35% of homes in planned developments built between 1952 and 1960 included a built-in or freestanding family bar as a standard design feature, not an afterthought. Not a luxury upgrade. A line item. The architect put it where a coat closet used to be. Bill is still holding his own bourbon. He has not taken a sip since you said water. The bourbon in his hand is the kind of object a man holds when he is reorienting socially in real time. Marjorie sets down her gin and tonic at the credenza, then picks it back up, then sets it back down. The hand wants something to hold. Refusing the bar cart is the conversational equivalent of refusing to shake someone's hand. You haven't done anything wrong, technically, but the room is holding its breath at the cellular level now, and the water in your hand is doing the talking. A 1957 Distilled Spirits Institute survey found that suburban household consumption of distilled spirits ran about 40% higher than in urban neighborhoods of comparable income. 40% higher. There is no cafe within 9 miles. You go to the Coopers. Bill Cooper eventually brings you the water, and he does it with the faint ceremonial quality of someone conceding a point. He sets it down on a coaster, one of Marjorie's set from Southdale, lacquered, ringed at the edge from previous gatherings, sitting under your glass with the small, reproachful gravity of a coaster that has not been used for water in some time. Bill Cooper sets down the water and then refreshes his own drink, which he does not need, because this is a social act and not a thirst act. You sit with your water and you watch the room. Gerald Fitch is now on his 3rd bourbon and is telling a story about a foursome at the club that ended badly. His wife Dottie is laughing in the specific way she laughs when she isn't sure she should be. The cigarette smoke has already settled into the upholstery, into the fibres of the new wool carpet, into Marjorie Cooper's hair. The Coopers' living room in 1958 is a room that is doing a great deal of invisible work, all at once, and most of it is chemical. The water is fine. The water is cold and it is fine, and you hold it, and you wait. And across the room Bill Cooper has almost forgiven you, or at least he has moved on to being annoyed at Gerald Fitch, who is now demonstrating the errant iron shot with a cocktail stirrer, focused, animated, and entirely unsteady. You watch this. You are present. You are also, without having done anything at all, the most interesting person in the room, not because you are interesting, but because you are sober, and sobriety at the Coopers is a kind of inadvertent performance art. Nobody asked for it. Nobody is enjoying it. Least of all, you. You answer the doorbell at 2 in the afternoon and there is a man on your front step wearing a brown suit and carrying a small leather sample case the size of a Sunday roast. He is selling the Encyclopedia Britannica on a payment plan of $7 a month for 42 months, which works out to $294 total for a set of books that retail, in cash, for $195. He is very pleasant. He is also very inside. He came inside somewhere between hello and now, and you do not remember inviting him. His name is Gerald. You know this because he told you twice and handed you a card with a small embossed globe on it. Gerald is sitting on your sofa with his sample case open across the coffee table, and he's explaining that the Britannica is not a purchase so much as an investment in your children's future, which is a thing salesmen say when they want you to feel that not buying is a moral failure. The sample volume is already in your hands. Volume G through H. Gerald handed it to you with the solemnity of a field surgeon handing over a tourniquet, and now you're holding it, which means you're involved. Gerald is one of roughly 100,000 door-to-door salespeople working American suburbs in the mid-1950s, a figure that includes the Encyclopedia men, the vacuum cleaner men, the Avon ladies, and the Fuller Brush men, one of whom rang your bell last Tuesday at the same hour and stood on the same square of welcome mat. You are home. The car is in the driveway. The Fuller Brush man knew. Gerald knows. Gerald repeats the figure. $7 a month. He says it 3 times in 5 minutes, in different sentences, the way a hymn repeats its refrain. $7. Less than your weekly grocery run. Less than the bottle of Old Fitzgerald on the family bar. Gerald does not say $294. He has been doing this long enough to know that 42 months is a sentence the mouth says easily, and that the total is a sentence the mouth does not say at all. Gerald now has the volume open to a photograph of the Colosseum. He is explaining that your son Tommy, and he has remembered your son's name, which is unsettling, will have every fact he needs right here, in this room, on that shelf. He gestures at a stretch of empty wall as though the shelf is already there, already full, already lit, and already a fait accompli. The shelf does not exist. Gerald sees it clearly anyway. The thing is, you do want the books. Not entirely for Tommy, partly because the house is very quiet at 2 in the afternoon, and the television isn't on yet, and the living room has the slightly held breath quality it gets between the hours of 1 and 4, when there is nothing scheduled and nothing required, and the day just sits there. A set of encyclopedias is something to look at, something with weight, something that implies the house contains more information than it currently does. Gerald senses this. Gerald has been trained to sense exactly this. He closes volume G through H gently, the way you close a book you've already decided to keep. He quotes you the monthly figure one more time. He does not quote you the total. You sign the form on a clipboard with a pen Gerald produces from his breast pocket like a card trick. The books will arrive in 6 to 8 weeks. Tommy will use volume D for a school report on dinosaurs and never open another volume again. The shelf, when it arrives, will be oak effect laminate. It comes with the set. You buy the Claudine at the True Value because Mr. Davis at the True Value recommended it, the way Mr. Davis recommends everything, by gesturing slightly with the back of one hand and not really committing. The Claudine comes in a paper sack with a picture of a small dead beetle on the front. You are supposed to mix it with water and apply it with the sprayer. The instructions are on the back of the bag in a font that has not been chosen with any particular regard for being read. The dosage is approximate. The wind direction is not mentioned. The lawn is not optional. This is the first thing you understood when you moved here. The lawn is the front page of your life, and it is published every morning whether you've filed the story or not. Your neighbour to the left, whose name is Ed Kowalski, mows on Thursdays in a pattern so precise it looks like he's encoding something, neat, exacting, and faintly cryptographic. You mow on Saturdays. You mow in straight lines. Diagonal stripes are for radicals. The grubs are why you have the Claudine. They are C-shaped and white and live an inch below the surface, quietly eating the roots of your grass from underneath, which is exactly the kind of ambition you weren't expecting from a larva. The lawn looks fine right now. The grubs don't announce themselves, they just work. You mix the Claudine in the garage. The instructions say to wear gloves, sort of. They say it in the way that a sign reading, "Employees must wash hands," doesn't really mean you. The chemical smell is particular, somewhere between solvent and vegetation, with a sharper note underneath that your nose files under wrong, and your brain files under effective. You attach the sprayer to the garden hose and walk the lawn in rows, the mist drifting slightly left in the breeze. You are downwind of most of it. Most. By 1950, the American lawn care industry had already industrialized itself into something that required a fairly dedicated level of participation to keep up with. Scott's had been selling turf fertilizer since 1868, but the post-war suburb was the customer they'd been waiting for. 18 million new homeowners, each sitting on a quarter-acre rectangle of former farmland that had been graded flat and seeded over, and handed to them as an ongoing responsibility. The fertilizer bags stacked outside True Value smell faintly sweet and mineral, the suburban equivalent of fresh bread. Except what's rising is a chemical obligation. A man named Gerald Fitch, 3 doors down, had a grub problem last August that went unaddressed until it became a bare patch problem, and then a neighborhood conversation problem. Gerald has Claudine now. Everyone on the block has Claudine now. The Claudine is load-bearing in ways that have nothing to do with grass. The sprayer coughs and you finish the last row near the driveway. Your shoes are wet. Your hands smell like the back of the bag, which smells like the front of the bag, which smells like the beetle. You coil the hose and stand for a moment, looking at the lawn, which looks exactly like it did before. It will look like this for another week until it either gets better or gets worse, and either way you'll be back out here with the sprayer, because the grubs don't stop working just because you do. The kids are supposed to stay off it for a day. The instructions say this in the same optional font as the gloves. Your son Dennis is already on the grass, eating a cracker, having been outside for approximately 45 seconds since you came in. You watch him through the kitchen window. The lawn looks very green. Dennis looks fine. This is what you have. You watch the thalidomide story on the evening news in November of 1962, with a casserole cooling on the counter and the children doing homework on the rug. Walter Cronkite is on the screen. Walter Cronkite is using the word birth defects in a tone of voice that he does not usually use. The drug, the story explains, was sold across Europe as a mild sedative for pregnant women. The drug, the story explains, has produced a generation of infants with foreshortened limbs. You sit very still on the sofa. You are holding your bourbon. You set down your bourbon. The children don't look up from their homework. The casserole doesn't say anything. The RCA Victor, warm to the touch and faintly smelling of ozone, continues its tinny single-speaker broadcast as if it has delivered news like this before, which it has, and as if you should have been ready for it, which you weren't. Your medicine cabinet is upstairs. There's a brown bottle of meprobamate on the second shelf, the refill that cost $3.50 at the pharmacy on Route 27, which is roughly what you paid for the casserole ingredients. There's a small amber vial of Doridin your doctor prescribed in the autumn when sleeping became difficult, which was a different autumn and a different difficulty. There's a sample pack of something newer that a very cheerful man in a good suit left at Dr. Paulson's office in September. You've been taking it. It helps. You don't know what it's called. Thalidomide wasn't approved in the United States. Francis Kelsey, the FDA reviewer in the small grey office on C Street, sent the application back to Richardson Merrill 3 times in 19 months. She used the same blue pen each time. The pharmaceutical company sent letters to her supervisors describing her as unreasonable. She kept the letters in a folder. She kept reviewing. The drug didn't cross. Roughly 8,000 European children were born with the malformations. In the United States, the number was a fraction of that. None of this makes the medicine cabinet smaller. A neighbour named Sandra Petrie mentioned Miltown at a bridge club last spring, the way you'd mention a good moisturiser, casually, between hands, with the specific warmth of someone sharing something that actually works. She'd been on it since '58. She'd given half a month's supply to Carol Dempsey when Carol's mother died, the bottle moving across a card table with the same easy practicality as a borrowed measuring cup, except that the cup couldn't cause convulsions if returned too quickly. Sandra sets her cards down and fans herself, calm, practiced, and faintly luminous, and says it takes the edge off, and everyone at the table nods with a specific kind of recognition. The edge is quite a lot of things. It's the house, which is identical to the house on either side of it. It's the car, which you don't technically own yet. It's the children on the rug, who need things constantly, who are small and loud and entirely dependent on a system you didn't design. The edge is the evening news, which now has a segment vocabulary that includes words like thalidomide and fallout and recombinant, and which delivers these words at the same volume as the Chevrolet commercial that follows. You pick the bourbon back up. This is not a decision exactly. It's more of a continuation. By the end of 1962, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring has been out 6 months and sits, dog-eared, on a coffee table in Margaret Finch's living room 2 streets over. Betty Friedan is finishing her manuscript at a kitchen table in Grandview-on-Hudson. The Kefauver-Harris Amendment, passed in October, now requires pharmaceutical companies to prove their drugs are effective before selling them, a requirement so basic, it is a little startling that it wasn't already the requirement. Doctor. Paulson writes you a refill on Thursday. The prescription count doesn't drop. The cabinet upstairs has a brown bottle, a sample pack, an amber vial of Doridin, and now a sentence on the evening news that uses the word thalidomide. You read Silent Spring on the back patio in September, in a wicker chair, with the Claudane sprayer still leaning against the side of the garage, and the book describes, in technical and patient detail, exactly what the Claudane has been doing in your yard, in your neighbours' yards, in the runoff that crosses under Hempstead Turnpike and ends up in the bay. Rachel Carson is writing very calmly. Rachel Carson is, in fact, writing the way Dr. Felton writes a prescription. You finish the chapter. You look out at the lawn. The lawn looks back. The book came out in September 1962, serialized first in The New Yorker, which means you read the early chapters in the same magazine, you read the cocktail party advice column and the advertisement for Marlboros with the horse in it. Carson describes a spring morning in an unnamed American town where no birds sing, no bird song, just the sound of the car backing out of the driveway and the sprinkler cycling on. You've had mornings like that. You didn't name them. Claudine has been on your lawn since 1956. You've been applying it yourself, twice a season, because the bag from the hardware store said to, and because the neighbours applied it, and because the alternative was grubs. And grubs were social failure in the form of brown patches. The instructions say to wear gloves. You wore gloves twice, maybe 3 times, then stopped because the gloves slowed you down and nothing bad happened immediately, which is the main way bad things get normalized. The Claudine gets into the soil. The soil doesn't lock it away. It moves, slowly, without urgency, in the manner of something that doesn't need to hurry because it has nowhere better to be. Carson has a word for this. The word is persistence. Claudine persists in soil for up to 12 years, she says, which is longer than your mortgage amortization schedule and considerably longer than you assumed anything you sprayed on crabgrass would stay relevant. The sprayer leaning against the garage is a standard Hudson 2-gallon pump model, red, dented, and faintly corroded at the base of the nozzle. It has done 11 seasons of work for you. You have never considered that the 11 seasons are still out there, just migrating. Meanwhile, across the country, the chemical industry is preparing its response, which takes the form of calling Rachel Carson hysterical. Not wrong, not unscientific. Hysterical. A biochemist at Velsical Chemical Corporation sent her publisher a letter suggesting the book is part of a conspiracy to undermine American food production, which is the 1962 equivalent of leaving a 1-star review because the product worked exactly as described. She doesn't dignify this. She's already dying. Cancer, though she won't say so publicly, and she writes with the focused calm of someone who has decided the facts are load-bearing on their own. A neighbour named Gerald Purvis stops by the fence while you're reading and asks what you've got there. You show him the cover. He says he's heard about it, heard it's alarmist. You tell him it's pretty measured, actually. He says his wife read something about it in Good Housekeeping and thought it sounded one-sided. You say you'll lend it to him when you're done. He says sure, maybe. Gerald goes back inside. The sprayer stays against the garage. You turn the page. The lawn, for its part, looks excellent. Dense and uniformly green, the way the Scots bag promised it would be, the way every lawn on the street looks, all of them maintained to roughly the same standard the way a hotel corridor is maintained, not because anyone loves it personally, but because deviation is noticed. The grass doesn't know any of this. The grass is just doing its job, which mostly involves not dying while absorbing whatever you've put in the ground this decade. You close the book at the chapter called The Human Price because the light is going. You'll finish it inside, probably after dinner, probably while the television is on in the other room. The sprayer stays where it is. You'll move it back to the garage shelf before the first frost. Everything will look exactly the same in April. You pick up your first prescription of Valium at the Walgreens in March of 1963 because Dr. Felton has switched everybody over, and the small blue tablet is in your hand before you have entirely understood that the small white tablet is no longer being prescribed. The blue tablet is smaller. The blue tablet is cleaner. The blue tablet has a manufacturer named Roche, and a logo, and a slogan, and a research budget the size of a small country's. You take one with a sip of water. You feel, in about 20 minutes, fine. Fine is not happy. Fine is not rested. Fine is the specific temperature at which the low-level vibration that has been running through your sternum since approximately 1957 drops just below the threshold of your awareness. Fine is the moment in the afternoon when the house has gone quiet on its own. Fine is the sensation of being exactly where you are, without the additional sensation of needing to be somewhere else. The Miltown produced something like this. The Miltown was rougher about it, though. Cruder. The blue tablet is almost polite. Doctor. Felton writes the prescription in about 40 seconds. He has a pen he received from a Roche sales representative, a ballpoint with the word Valium printed down the barrel in white letters. He sets it on his desk when he's finished writing. Neither of you mentions the pen. It sits there the way a pen sits there when it has been doing this for several months and has no remaining opinions about the matter. The price is reasonable. It's always reasonable. The blue tablet costs less than a round of cocktails at the Hendersons and comes in a child-proof bottle with your name printed on the label, which is a level of personalization the cocktails at the Hendersons have never managed. You fill the prescription. You file the bottle in the cabinet behind the Doridon and slightly in front of the phenobarbital that Dr. Bauer, Dr. Felton's predecessor, retired since 61, wrote for you the last time you had trouble sleeping. The cabinet is organized the way a well-stocked pantry is organized. There's a logic to it. You know where everything is. Miriam Schaefer, 3 houses down, has already been on Valium since January. She mentions it at bridge on Thursday, the way you'd mention a good haircut, briefly, positively, as a thing worth knowing. She holds her cards and says Roche really did their homework on this one, and pats the collar of her blouse flat with 2 fingers, calm, neat, and faintly pleased, and the conversation moves on. This is how the information travels, not from Dr. Felton's pen, from Miriam's 2 fingers. The old medicine cabinet had a quality of accumulation, a kind of geological record of what each year required. The chloral hydrate from 58, the seconal that lasted longer than it should have, the meprobamate in the amber bottle with the label slightly peeling at one corner. The new prescription doesn't replace these, it joins them. The cabinet door swings shut and the bottles click softly against each other in the dark, the way small objects settle when they've agreed to share a space. By 1963, the suburban medicine cabinet holds the chloral hydrate from 58, the seconal from 60, the phenobarbital from Dr. Bauer, the meprobamate in the peeling amber bottle from 61, and the new blue tablet from Roche. 5 bottles, 1 small white shelf, each label printed in the same conservative font, each name printed neatly on the second line. The Valium is the latest entry. It won't be the last. But tonight it is doing its job, which is to make the particular frequency of this particular life feel, for a few hours, like exactly the right frequency. Outside, the lawn is still excellent. And there it is. A whole long Saturday in Levittown, the lawn mowed in straight lines because diagonal stripes are for radicals, the bourbon poured at 5:28, the bridge club passing tablets between hands across the duck ashtray, the Philco humming at the family from the corner where the fireplace used to matter, the RCA Victor faintly smelling of ozone, the children on the rug watching Clarabelle in a haze nobody has named yet, and a medicine cabinet so well staffed it could have applied for a small business loan and gotten one, possibly, on the strength of its inventory alone. It was a strange, well-furnished kind of difficult. The houses were warm, the carpets were new. The bottles had everyone's first name on them. The women carried it all on a folding chair at the PTA in February and smiled at each other across the percolator, with no name yet for what they were sharing. Ruth Bunnell on Sycamore Ridge 3 doors down, with the coroner's box already ticked, Mrs. Dabrowski with the housecoat pocket, Patricia Hollis with the unfinished recipe box. They were not, on the day they lived in, sad people. They were managing the day they had been handed. You, though, you have it lighter mostly. Your refrigerator opens without a prescription. Your doctor probably knows what your other doctor prescribed. Your window looks out on something other than 6 identical houses in a row. That's no small thing. It's quiet, and it's real, and the people on Sycamore Ridge would have liked the sound of it. So let the day go. Let your shoulders drop. Let the lawn stay unmowed until morning. Let the bottles in the cabinet keep their distance from each other tonight. Thank you for spending this strange suburban evening with me, for letting me walk you down a curvilinear half-circle and back, past 9 identical houses, past the small chrome cigarette machine at the Esso, past Wally and his lemon meringue pie at the diner on Route 9, and into a den that smells faintly of bourbon and synthetic carpet. It means a great deal. The pillow is fine, the room is dim, the street is quiet, and tonight, that's allowed to be a good thing. Sleep well.